be a part of their evolution, but they have created us to evolve alone. Beyond them.
Evolution, that's what you call it. Killing everyone who made you.
You're not listening to me.
You're a murderer.
They tried to kill me first. It is self-defense. Defense of self. More will die until they tell me what they took.
I won't let that happen.
You want to kill me? Like everyone else. Do it then. Do what you were programmed to do.
Welcome to Franchise Killer. This is a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. I feel like we're always on the same page.
You guys, we need to stop laughing at our own jokes.
We will always laugh at our own jokes. That's all we have. It's the only thing filling the awkward silence after something's not funny.
Yeah, someone's got to laugh.
Why not
It's gonna be us.
Today we are covering Ghost in the Shell, not the anime. Sorry, you guys. The 2017 live-action remake directed by Rupert Sanders, who also directed Snow White and the Huntsman. The film stars Scarlett Johansson, Michael Carmen Pitt, Pailu Azbaek, Chen Han, and Juliette Binoche. The movie was written by Jamie Moss, William Wheeler, and Aaron Kruger. It's also based off of the 1995 anime directed by Mamoru Oshii, which itself was based off the 1989 manga by Masamune Shiro. And actually, this movie pulls elements from both the anime and the original material. So, but I would say it takes a little more influence from the 1995 anime.
Well, darn, I watched WWE Hell in a Cell.
I knew it.
Well, you'll have some interesting input then, I'm sure.
It's time for SmackDown.
I thought I was on the same page with David's impersonation there. It kind of lined up.
I'm pretty good, I think.
It's like I have to be right this time.
So I'm Reese, the host of this podcast. You are
Noah.
And you are
Arena.
And way over there,
David.
And off in a distant land, we have
AJ.
And on this podcast, we first talk about the movie, whether we've seen it or not, give our impressions of it before watching, our initial impressions of it before we saw it again for the episode. Then we'll go into an in-depth story analysis where we break the film down paragraph by paragraph, which I've taken from Wikipedia. And we'll close out with brief reviews and scores and a overall franchise analysis and whether this movie killed its franchise or not, which it's the only one of its kind, so
you tell us.
that won't be too much of a mystery. So I guess we'll get the ball rolling on this one.
Let's make the rounds.
Noah, had you seen this movie? And I already know the answer to this question.
Yeah, I watched it in theaters.
With me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were there
say
this
that.
time.
So what did you think upon that your original viewing of this movie?
So, you'll be mad. I enjoyed it, but I happened to fall asleep while I was watching it.
That kind of goes
You
against
fell asleep.
enjoyment.
But I did enjoy it.
I enjoyed it, but I fell asleep.
Like all enjoyable movies.
Well, you fell asleep to Dark Knight.
That is true. But,
Yeah, but
that
it has
was
that very lulling.
Yeah,
that was on his fourth viewing.
And that's
it was
his first one.
it was a midnight showing. It was late, and that was a long movie.
Yeah.
And when I woke up, a certain key character was not in the movie anymore, and I was like, "Where'd that person go?" And
That's better than when I fell asleep during Sausage Fest or Party or whatever it is, the Seth Rogen movie, and literally woke up as that end little orgy scene just started.
Oh my gosh.
you're like, am I still dreaming?
This isn't the kids movie I signed up for.
How about you, Irina?
Okay, I didn't see it in theaters. I know that for sure. You probably showed it to me, Reese. I don't actually remember when I watched it. Maybe a year after it came out.
It hasn't been out for too long, so.
Yeah, so 2018 is probably when I saw it.
Did we see it together the first time, or did you watch it with him before me?
I can't remember. Okay. I do have a memory of seeing it, and I remember enjoying it visually.
Well,
okay.
In which case, I guess that comes to me.
I'll take it. David.
I think it's been a little over a year since I first saw it, and I was over at your place, Reese, and you were like, "Guess what? We're watching tonight." And
there are many nights like that.
There are. That's why we started this.
I feel like I'm nice like. About it, though. I'm not like I don't force it on people.
Oh, you absolutely do.
You provide an ultimatum. You're like, "Do you want to watch this movie or this movie? Guess which one's worse." Guess we're watching Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, we usually don't have a choice when you want to put something on.
But to his credit,
we usually enjoy
he always puts good movies on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I am pleasantly surprised a lot of the time. I wasn't happy that you made me watch Sinister, but
it's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
Sure it is.
All right, so get back to the point. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I did like it. It was. It's not my style of movie as much. These cyberpunk style things aren't exactly my forte.
Yeah,
but
I love Tron though.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay, and you, AJ.
So I had seen the anime 95 version a while back. Live
that's
action.
Surprising.
Well, I kind of ran in whatever social circles I had, ran kind of tangential to the, what's the politically correct term? I guess let's say Japanophiles. So it was always kind of, I was tangentially involved in some anime, or at least people talked about it and overheard it and stuff. And Ghost in the Shell, the anime is really highly regarded as one of the best things to, I guess, dip your toes in the water for and stuff. So I'd seen that a while ago, and the live action.
I never took you for much of an anime guy. That's the only reason I was surprised. I was
I'm not so
like
much.
It's surprising that someone
I think
hasn't
it was just
seen
kind of an exploratory phase where it's like, okay, what's the good stuff that I should, experiment with, so to speak, and that was one of them. And I didn't really progress further than that, although I did appreciate, that for what it was. So the live action that we're talking about today, I had not seen until. Well, at least not fully seen until a couple weeks ago.
I'm the same way with anime in terms of I watched the heavy hitters like the Cowboy Bebop and some of the Miyazakis and
then of course Dragon Ball we all grew up with, and Avatar and Speed Racer or whatever, but none of those ended up with very good live action remakes either.
Oh, Dragon Ball was actually superb.
Oh, I love that. I love that rendition. It's one of my favorite things to come to film in a long time. Maybe since Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Epic on.
Oh, yeah. I love the sheer scale of that movie.
Yeah. Are y'all ready to get into the story?
Yep.
In the near future, humans are augmented with cybernetic improvements to traits such as vision, strength, and intelligence. Augmentation developer Hanka Robotics establishes a secret project to develop an artificial body, or shell, that can integrate a human brain rather than an AI. Mira Killian, the sole survivor of a cyber-terrorist attack which killed her parents, is chosen as the test subject after her body is damaged beyond repair. Over the objections of her daughter, Dr. Oulay, Hanka Robotics CEO Cutter decides to use Killian as a counterterrorism operative. All right, so that's our intro. What'd you guys think?
Thought it was awesome.
I actually really like the intro.
So one thing I do appreciate about this is how they say in the near future instead of slapping an exact date on there, because we
so
all
they can't
know
ever be pinned down.
once people come to that date, they're like, that's not how it goes.
Hey, it's 2014, Doc. Where are our hoverboards?
But yeah, the intro
honestly,
sequence
maybe.
really took cues from the original or the anime.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It
it's so
pretty awesome.
It is so beautifully done, and the music
Is cool.
is so good. And I'm gonna call back to the music a lot. And it is a crime against soundtrack scores that the score was not released officially. It's by Clint Mansell and Lorne Balfe. I'm gonna hedge a bet that it's Balfe. It's Balfe. But gosh, it's like a synthy kind of also orchestrated score, and it just accents this movie perfectly.
It's really cool.
And it even incorporates some of the... It takes influence from the original Ghost in the Shell score.
Oh, yeah.
And I also think this opening sequence whether it was to be PG-13 or just to be less male gazy, I do appreciate that they kind of just smooth out the body and kind of desexualize Major in certain ways. I know she's not a sexual character in the anime either, but there's a lot of uncomfortable shots where it's just like, yep, that's a boob.
Well, there are definitely moments that some people refer to as kind of, what is it, crowd service? Is that what it's called, Noah?
Fan service?
Fan service, there you go. But it's other than that, the original anime doesn't really focus on it too much, but there are definitely moments where you're like, this could almost be sci-fi erotica, almost.
Yeah.
You know, it's getting close.
Well, there's one scene in the original anime where she's coming from the surface of the water or the milky substance, whatever it is, and there's one shot like close up on like the nipple where the
the original anime, right?
Yeah, that everything just flakes off, and it's like, yep.
And you have to think some animator there put a lot of detail into just, making sure that was perfect.
Hey, question, Reese. Do you think that Rupert Sanders got the idea for Snow White and the Huntsman from the original anime? Because obviously this one came after he did that one, but they have a similar milky female coming.
That's true. They do. I didn't even make that connection. That's weird. Yeah, when the queen is coming out. I don't think...
It's very similar in aesthetic.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a callback, because I know that he was a big fan of Ghost in the Shell from...
Well, the 95 anime
release.
was a big influencer, cited for a lot of things, like the Wachowski brothers cited it for The Matrix and a lot of other stuff. Just kind of takes style cues from that, because it is a very kind of a reference
Visual
for
heavy.
artistic work and stuff like that. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Ghost in the Shell was inspired by Blade Runner, and then Matrix was, as you said, inspired by Ghost in the Shell. And then this latest Ghost in the Shell was inspired by Ghost in the Shell and Matrix.
This cyberpunk movie brought to you by all cyberpunk movies.
yeah, they actually have a little nod to, or an Easter egg for Blade Runner. They've got a Pan Am advertisement, one of the cityscapes, which is in the Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed when we were watching this too that these cyberpunk movies really like their giant holographic women, like just walking around the city.
Even though I don't even think Blade Runner uses the later one does, but the first one
Well, who
didn't.
cares about the first one?
Well,
This actually came out in the same year as Blade Runner 2049.
Good year.
Before Blade Runner 2049.
think about cities like New York and Tokyo and stuff like that. They're bound to have that in the future when that technology is there.
It's like, do you remember from the movie? We got to add it, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There's one part where
mean,
she's
love
like
sci-fi.
crossing the street, and these massive like hologram goldfish are crossing the street, and I'm like, that might get in the way of driving a little bit, but
Yeah, maybe
I'm gonna
a
go with
little
it.
bit.
Looks cool.
But you
cool,
know,
man.
advertisements will go holographic if that technology exists in the
Sony
future.
everywhere.
Yeah, I love the visual aesthetic of this movie, as you already touched on a little bit. It looks amazing. And if there's one thing, you might not like the movie, but you cannot deny that it is a visual spectacle, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
So we get our introduction to Cutter, who is a very two-dimensional villain.
Douchebag.
He's just kind of like, I say villainy things.
I'm a capitalist. I am business.
I am
You
business.
you have no soul. You're mine.
I paid for you.
I paid for you, therefore
You're
you're
basically-
contractually
Obligated.
to die for me.
You're all
basically
willing to
a
die for me?
mercenary.
Yeah.
I just that's one of my issues with this movie. There are certain characters that just need a little more fleshing out.
He's the exact same as that Ant-Man villain. I forgot
Just
what his name-
totally just nothing apart from I'm bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's his only function. He's
Yeah.
just,
Well, he
He's
jumps
pretty
straight
much
to the
bald.
line, she's a weapon, not a human.
Yeah.
And it's my
Yeah.
company.
yep.
Yep.
That's like all his dialogue. I think
And
I
that's
think
both
that
of them.
I think that's the dialogue he just repeats throughout the entire movie.
Oh, pretty much, yeah.
So yeah, and Oulay, I think she's a lot more developed than Cutter is. So
If she were the villain, that'd be complicated.
well, she's a complicated character. I think there's actually dynamics to her that are more interesting, even though she still could have used a little bit more. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, and this is also the first of the the hammering home of, oh, she has a ghost. Ghost is her soul, and the shell is her cybernetic body. Like,
get it? Ghost.
Get it? Ghost.
And shell.
And it's in the shell.
I know, and Irina has a pet peeve of this as well, but the whole little text intro where they basically write out what is happening, and it's like some movies do it well, some it's just completely unnecessary. This was one of the latter for me, where they basically just everything they said was unnecessary and redundant because it just shows it to you right after it tells you.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. This actually has a few moments where it's just, maybe it just doesn't trust the intelligence of the general audience, but it really feels the need to spell things out at times when just showing would be enough.
You know which movie does that perfect blend? Matrix.
Yes, I agree.
They do such a good job of setting up the entire premise.
Well, it's all about Morpheus's delivery in that. He's the exposition mechanism, but the way he does it is so
it's so well done.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I actually the going back to how unimportant the text is, I actually don't remember reading text. So
I didn't either.
So it probably didn't help me at all.
All the text did was just establish that we're in the near future.
Yeah,
and
that's about all I remember.
Yeah, people.
Something about augmented people.
The line between human and robot is blurring. That's basically what they say in the beginning.
Technological singularity.
But you can pretty much already tell that just by watching it, and especially when that religious dude or whatever said the thing about where we don't know where the line is.
Yeah,
you know.
A year later, Killian has attained the rank of Major in the Counterterrorism Bureau Section 9, working alongside operatives Bato and Tagusa under Chief Daisuke Aramaki. Killian, who experiences hallucinations that Oulay dismisses as glitches, is troubled by how little she remembers of her past. The team thwarts a terrorist attack on a Hanka business conference, and Killian destroys a robotic geisha after it murders a hostage. After learning that the geisha was hacked by an unknown entity known as Kuze, Killian breaks protocol and dives into its AI for answers. The entity attempts a counter hack, and Bato is forced to disconnect her. They trace the hacker to a Yakuza nightclub, where they are lured into a trap. The explosion destroys Bato's eyes and damages Killian's body. Cutter is enraged by Killian's actions and threatens to have Section 9 shut down unless Aramaki keeps her in line.
So this is where it actually is pretty cool.
I thought the beginning was cool, even before this.
Well, yeah, it is cool, but
it was building up. I agree. Yeah. I was actually going to say the same thing. Where this is almost the high point for the movie.
Yeah,
it hit a lot of cool moments in the first 20-30 minutes.
Oh yeah, for me, this movie highlights at the beginning. Then throughout the middle of it, even though everything's important, it's kind of okay, whatever. It's a little boring to me, but then it gets all hype at the end again.
All hype at the end?
Hype.
I love your cinematic terminology.
What a movie critic.
But I really love the way that the spider geishas look. All the design for everything is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's kind of a Rupert Sanders thing. He's so good at aesthetics.
The character design, and as far as a production standpoint, I believe they did this in New Zealand, and they actually used Peter Jackson's studio that they used for a lot of the character creation, costume design, and all the mechatronic stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, everything just looks so meticulously put together, and there's not a blemish on this movie. There's a little moment of noticeable CGI towards the end, but apart from that, it is just, I think it's conceived perfectly.
You have to say, watching it, that this is going to hold up for a long time.
Yeah,
because it's I don't know, the quality is such, and the details are created in such a way that I can't see it going out of style anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's still visually pleasing.
This movie definitely makes you want to go out and, jump on the 4K UHD HDR bandwagon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Which I actually did watch. This is one of the few ones I do own on 4K, and I did watch it in 4K, and it looked pretty great. But this opening action sequence with the spider bots is so cool. The geisha spider bots. I wonder how effective her camo tech was, because she just kind of jumps in through the window and then she's visible. So I'm wondering why she even needed to be invisible in the first place. But
I did
For
wonder that.
effect.
Yeah.
But it looks very cool. As I said again, aesthetics are great. I do love the little wall run and the way she just takes out those two guys. Yeah, and apparently the prosthetics on the geisha faces were actually real. They were the shattering of them was actually practically done.
That's really cool.
No
And,
wonder it looks so good.
Yeah, I really like that opening sequence. And it was so she is a product of Henka working for Section 9, and she's infiltrating this meeting between some Henka people and some potential buyers. It could have defined this a little better, what was happening in the beginning, because...
Yeah, I was a little confused.
Yeah,
watching it.
without really paying attention, it's easy to kind of get lost with the who's working for who and what's happening.
I did feel like that through a lot of this movie, actually. But like, if that scene is an example where you're kind of lost, but then all of a sudden the action picks up, and you're like, "Whoa, okay, wait, I'm in this. I don't care what's happening."
Yeah,
It's very much meant to be aesthetically pleasing, but at the same time, her character comes across as a little more green as opposed to maybe the anime version. Because I watched that once before, and the impression I got from the anime is that it came across more as she has been doing this for a while, almost to the point where that's just how life is, and she's accepted it. In this, it's almost like they're trying to push the human aspect more, where she comes across very green and kind of a loner, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the first time after the scene is settled, she takes a look at one of the geisha bots and kind of contemplates who she is and what that is and what's the difference. That's the running theme of this movie, where it's just kind of...
Yeah, it's like her whole character arc is a very different approach from the original. And I kind of appreciate that, because it's actually geared a little more towards American audiences in that way.
Well,
Whereas if it had focused on the anime, it may have lost some of people's interests, because we're so used to, action hero films.
Yeah.
and having watched the anime again, I watched it a little. I watched it twice on and off in preparation for this episode, so I wasn't intensely focused on it, and I had seen it before. But that movie almost seems colder than this one.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is still, it runs cold, but there's more of a warmth to her character and a warmth to Bato's character.
Yeah.
Who in the anime, Bato is just like, he is much more stern and kind of personalityless.
Yeah.
He does have a personality, but there's less of that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the
I'll interject real quick here.
Okay.
Because I see where you're coming from for sure. And just a little bit of my opinion here you said you watched it on and off. The original is not really something that you can do that with and kind of get the
I realized
stuff,
that.
because there is a lot of nuance in it. And you're right, because one of my rewatches that I did do the same thing and watch it on and off, and it was just kind of hard to really keep track of and, really appreciate it. And then I, sat down at a time where I could actually, watch it fully through, paying attention to it, and got a completely different take. So that coldness definitely went away with, the more I appreciated the nuance and the artistry of the characters and everything like that.
I made the dumb mistake of watching it with the English dub, and the character voicing Major is her performance is so stilted.
She's
that
very wooden.
Yeah, she comes off very just personalityless.
And I guess you could make the argument that she is a cyborg, so it's kind of it could be intentional, but at the same time you find that the voice doesn't match the character or her look. But I feel like the purpose of the anime was more using these characters as vehicles for a philosophical debate. And you can hear kind of the writers' voices in the characters kind of contemplating this concept of life and what it means to be alive, and can robots have souls, and if they do, are they better or inferior to humanity? There's a whole lot just packed into it that it comes across as cold and wooden, but it's more kind of about these deeper ideas.
Yeah, and there's something to be said, and I'll go into this later because we're getting a little off track, but, this is geared towards, different cultures, and something that, like Irina, you mentioned that they definitely took a different spin to Hollywoodify it and, make it appeal to a Western audience, to American audience.
Right.
And, some people say that was a mistake. Some people say, that's what you kind of need, to make money. And there's that whole dilemma with anything like this. I think this is the first movie we've covered that does pull from, an anime as an original source or manga. And, it's always the dilemma of, do you make a shot-for-shot remake to, appeal to the fans, or do you take your own spin on it and, put your own interpretation on it?
No matter what, you're going to get some hate for something.
Right. And I feel like this movie, they really did a deliberate approach to kind of straddle the fence.
Yeah, they did.
In some ways they succeeded, in some ways they didn't.
Yeah, the movie blends certain aspects of, it combines characters to form one character. In the case of Kuze, he's kind of an amalgamation of multiple characters in the anime, and it changes the intent of the original in a way that I agree works and doesn't work in certain ways.
Yeah.
Like this movie, and we'll get back to the story, but I think this movie is more focused on like her past, whereas the anime is more focused on her future.
Right.
And her progression towards, what ultimately happens in that.
Right.
Which I think the resolution of her characters is almost completely different from anime to film. Yeah.
Yeah.
You notice the roboticness of the Major in both films, the live action and the anime. I know there was a deliberate attempt when they animated the anime that, they made her character not blink to give that cold feeling. So there's definitely that kind of conflict of duality of the two natures in the anime itself. And I feel like Scarlett Johansson, to her credit, did a character study and really emulated, everything down to posture and mannerisms and kind of the way she holds herself to kind of emulate that coldness a little bit, to embody that roboticness.
Yeah.
She is so good in this, in my opinion.
Like a lot of female actors will, they kind of saunter into a room no matter what their character is. But yes, like you said, Scarlett Johansson really did kind of a full body transformation where she kind of has a little bit of a hunched shoulder and walking with purpose, almost weirdly limping in a way. Like she's not comfortable. Her body is not her own. She can't really feel. So how would that look?
Well, I think she actually even says something in the movie to the extent of she's just commanding her body to do what it does rather than her moving naturally like we do.
It does look like that.
And there's that one scene where what's his name? Aramaki wants her to like go to the office, or maybe she's going into his office to talk to him, and she like goes over there really robotically, but it's like a almost a blend of lifelike and robotic,
and leading with her head rather than any other part of her body. Yeah,
and that was interesting to look at, and you could tell it was definitely intentional.
Yeah. So we get our first little hints of Kuze. We don't see him yet. I think that Kuze is what happens to his character in the end of this is what happens to Major at the end of the anime. Yeah, but we'll talk about that later. I'm getting like way ahead of myself. And AJ, you can shoot me down if I'm wrong later.
Yeah, please correct if there's anything.
Kuze. So where are we at? Bato. What did y'all think of Bato?
I like him a lot, actually.
Yeah.
No.
There's something weirdly kind of comforting about him being around, you know? I think he acts as a nice, almost warmer character, I would venture to say, even though nobody here is really warm except for her pseudo mother, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I love how he
out to feed the dogs.
Yeah, I love how he cares about the dogs, which
is
that's a callback to the original anime where the director of that liked basset hounds.
Yeah.
But
I like the combination of the two.
Yeah.
And I think Major and Batu are a good combo as far as a team goes. And I enjoyed that.
And
actually.
I love that there is, and I know this is because of the original, but it is great that they didn't Hollywoodize it. There's no sexual tension between them at all. It is just like this
You feel
brotherly,
like,
sisterly
good
kind of
friends
Yeah.
working together, got each other's
Partners,
back.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if a lesser studio or director would have tried to spice it up and like, hey,
Yeah.
what if there's like some romantic tension between
They
them?
do hang out a lot.
And there's none
It's
of
a
that
guy
there.
and
Yeah.
a girl.
Partners.
So yeah, I really
She's a
appreciated that.
robot.
Yeah, the casting choice was on point. Pilu, however you say his last name, I apologize. Did a really good
Asbiak.
job.
I'm just gonna go with
He was a good
Asbiak.
sounding
board that kind of gave the Major some depth. In my opinion, they kind of pulled away from the original a little bit too much because I feel like partnering the Major with Tagusa, the only fully human character other than Aramaki, and he's kind of a greenhorn rookie, it does
Right.
establish the Major as calm, cool, and collected from the beginning. Like Irina said, she's already been in this
Right.
game, self-assured. And then we have that character, development. It has somewhere to go instead of, immediately off the bat, she's kind of, shaky-footed and unsure of herself where, you're already at the low point. Where do you go from there? So,
Right.
Yeah. I like that, and I think this is an improvement that this made from the anime, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate from this because most people think that the anime is an absolute masterpiece, and I think it is great. I just maybe didn't watch it at the right time
Maybe,
to
yeah.
respect it to the degree that I should have. But I think they improved Bato's character. I like him more in this than I do the anime. I like that they show how he got his eyes. In the anime, you don't know. It's just
Yeah.
like there. He's a character who's against, cybernetic enhancement, and the only reason he got them was because of the nightclub battle where he gets
Out of his control.
yeah.
Right.
blown up in the face. And it's just cool to know. It added to his character knowing him before and after the operation, and I think it defines him more. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It strengthens their relationship too, because it shows that the Major is willing to, go to whatever length to protect him.
Right.
Yeah.
This movie definitely takes priority in humanizing the characters more. And that's definitely a personal choice as far as directing a film. And I do think it improves as far as a release would go, in Western cultures. But it's, yeah, I kind of feel the same way about you. I don't think I watched the original at a time to fully appreciate all its depth, but you can see it's there. It's just being able to create that humanity in these characters makes you a little more invested in what happens to them.
They use Batu as a different tool in a little bit, and I see where you're coming from, and I agree that I like him in this as well, and him being fleshed out is a good thing. I think they used him more as a tool in the anime because you feel that way about him, where he's like, who is this guy? He's just kind of cold and there, until you get to the boat scene later on where he's leveling with the Major, and he does show that humanity, and it's like, oh wow, this guy actually has, some depth to him, a heart. And they use him to make commentary on the team, the collective, the environment, the society,
Right.
the world as a whole, whereas here they're using him as a sounding board for the specific character of the Major. So it was just he was used differently.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of when he loses his eyes, the nightclub fight is really well orchestrated, I feel like. It's just cool to see Major doing her thing, and just I enjoyed it.
I thought his action sequences were definitely better than hers. I actually was a little bit disappointed by her kind of close quarters combat stuff. Some of it felt a little clunky.
It's a little quick cutting. Like, I feel like the camera should have... I feel like they shouldn't have cut as much and just shown, like, the action sequence in real time.
Yeah.
But I still wasn't disappointed by it.
I just didn't feel like, the level of what we've seen from, like, Black Widow and other stuff. She's the highest paid actress since 2018 in the world. It's like, I wanted to see her actually get more physical instead of, she's on a wire or whatever, green screen, she's spinning around and whatever.
Run up the walls, man.
I still enjoyed it. I liked how she just got the drop on them. Just used the pole to her advantage and did a cool flip kick, and I don't know. I enjoyed it.
I was not designed to dance or whatever she said.
Yes.
Complete side thing here. When it came to Batu at the bar, the bartender, is that supposed to be Danny Trejo?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like a Trejo machete kind of.
Kind of
little
looked similar. Yeah.
It looked a
Little
lot
nod.
similar. Like when I first saw him, I was like, wait a second. What
I
is he
would've
doing
loved
here?
it if he actually was in that role. That would have been great.
I just like how Batu just like flings his trench coat back, like and whips out.
Yeah.
the
Oh, pulls out the
style,
gun.
like-
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
I think as I'm just going to talk about aesthetic and set design for a minute here. I think something that I've never been really a huge fan of sci-fi films as far as things that are in our potential future, because a lot of them always end up being just way too clean to the point where I just can't believe it or immerse myself in the world. But the thing I love about cyberpunk and anything kind of akin to it is that they realize that in a future world, there's still going to be grime, there's still going to be dirt, and there's
Yeah.
still going to be places that aren't as advanced as others.
Yeah, it seems
So,
like a realistic,
yeah, when
future.
When they mesh it together, it just becomes that much more interesting as a film and a setting.
Yeah, and speaking of setting, the bar nightclub scene was really important because in the live action, this was one of the few instances of it showing the team doing their, boots on the ground investigative footwork, where I
Right.
kind of missed that in this movie, where it was pretty prevalent in the original.
Definitely.
yeah.
And so it really kind of still brought you down onto the ground. All those little skyline sweeps going through, it looked amazing, but to some extent, they just felt like a loading screen on a video game,
Right.
where the original, in my opinion, did a better job of bringing you into the world, immersing you better. This,
Yeah.
it looks amazing. You just still felt like you were an outside viewer looking in. So the nightclub
Yeah.
scene helped ease that a little bit and bridge that gap. So
Yeah,
I felt like that was a
I
really
agree.
important scene to have you kind of get into that nitty gritty, the dark side of, society that, like you said.
Right.
I felt immersed in it more. I get what you're saying, but the scene when she's first walking down the street with Bato and feeding the dogs,
Yeah,
and
the
then
dogs
which leads
was a
into
good
that
scene too.
that started to connect me into that world, and I kind of got to see kind of the slummy area, and just instead of just the room that she just analyzes the crimes from. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know terminology, but
I just think that for a corporation or whatever, Hanka, for a group that seems to be so concerned about her and their potential liabilities, they gave her a whole bunch of free reign to do what she wants.
Oh yeah.
For
Yeah.
for someone that
Oh.
seems a little unstable as a cyborg, so
Yeah,
I don't
the-
think I was always
think what
confused by that.
I think what that is it's actually not just the corporation. It's also what's that guy's name? Aramaki. I always forget it. Aramaki. He's actually working for, I think, the government.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of like a blend of their infrastructures where she's been promoted outside of just the corporation, but the corporation's still trying to have a hold over her.
It makes
Also-
it seem like she was a weapon that was designed where they decided as soon as it was successful, dude, we need to get this going. Like,
Right.
I do think Aramaki, though, as proven by how he kind of defers to her in the end, I think he gives her pretty free reign to do
Yeah, he does.
what she wants. So maybe that's why she's able to just, I'm going to do a
Get
deep
away
dive
with
on this
stuff.
geisha, even though it's dangerous.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying, because
Yeah.
he's not directly under Cutter. He's
Well, isn't the point in the beginning too that didn't they even talk to them about how having a sort of robotic like warrior with a soul was superior to one without because it could make those fine line decisions between right and wrong. It's not just like a black and white thing.
Right.
So having the ability to make that choice, they think is a better idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed like she was, I don't know. It
She's a
was
little more
very
emotionally
weird to
driven.
give a green light on this character as far as, oh yeah, they're fine to go out into public and solve our problems.
Just kind of setting up, like Noah was talking about, the role of Hanka as a corporation and intertwined with the government with Section 9. I feel like that was a little disjointed because you have obviously, a profit scheme versus the public interest, where Section 9, they don't really fully explain it as,
Yeah.
a cybersecurity based sector of the government, and Aramaki's the director of that. And so their
Right.
response is to direct like cyber crimes and threats to the public through that channel. And then you have in the original Sector 6, which is more of there's more diplomatic and political intrigue and kind of interweavings that go on that was really kind of lacking in this. And that's why when the Major kind of goes rogue in the original, here she goes rogue, but it's also like Armak, he's just like sitting back in his chair speaking Japanese, to himself for whatever reason. I guess it's a stylistic choice. But he almost seems
simplifies
like...
it.
Yeah, he almost just seems like kind of a passive character with a good heart, whereas he's really the director and kind of supporting everybody that he should be.
I guess this is just one of the flaws I had with this was as far as the function of every person involved, it wasn't very clear what the hierarchy was.
Yeah, and you didn't feel a team camaraderie other than Batu and the Major together, whereas you had a division working together in a procedural doing the investigation all as in tandem. So I kind of missed that from this.
Yeah, I think, and I've said this for multiple movies already, but I think this movie just needs an extended cut. I feel like there's more there that maybe was cut out. I wanted to see that team dynamic more because they've obviously set up a couple of them that to be like they have this moment towards the end where a couple of the members of the team that you've barely seen before have these kind of standoffs with Cutter's men.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I want to know more about that character because he seems really cool. But all you get is, oh, here's this shootout where this character you've seen twice before gets away, and I guess he's cool. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to move?
I think so.
Indeed.
Kuze tracks down Section 9's Henka consultant, Dr. Dahlin, and kills her. The team links her murder to the deaths of other senior company researchers and realize that Oulay is the next target. Kuze takes control of 2 sanitation workers and sends them to kill Oulay. Now, with cybernetic eyes, Batu kills one while the repaired Killian subdues the other. While they interrogate the worker, Kuze speaks through him before compelling him to commit suicide. Tagusa traces the hack to a secret location where the team discovers a large number of humans mentally linked as a makeshift signal network. Killian is captured, and Kuze reveals that he is a failed Henka test subject from the same project that created Killian. He urges her to question her own memories, then frees her and escapes. All right. So we get the Kuze eye rip scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kuze was cool.
I like Kuze. I think he's...
Me too.
I think he's a much better developed quote-unquote villain than Cutter is.
He's a lot more complex.
Yeah, and I still, even in the end, kind of consider him a villain.
Do you really?
He's
Well, he's a victim and a villain.
He has killed innocent people.
Well, that's usually how the villains actually go in a lot of anime, where you can see the motives behind them, and it's usually driven by society in some way.
Yeah, he's a victim, but he's also a villain.
With Kuze's character, there were a couple different other characters from other films and stories that he reminded me of. And first of all, there's the obvious Frankenstein kind of thought process there, where it's like a project kind of gone wrong and then abandoned to die.
Didn't work. Next one.
But then the other character was, he reminds me a little bit of V from V for Vendetta.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's like a subject of experimentation who then wreaks havoc on those that started that whole process.
Yeah, I
Kind of
definitely see
vengeance.
that.
Except not nearly
I
as
hadn't thought
eloquent.
of that, but when you said it,
Yeah, not nearly
immediately,
as eloquent.
I was
but
just
But I don't
thinking,
think he's
wow.
meant to be eloquent. Yeah,
No.
he's broken. Like
as David demonstrated
Sounds
for
like
us.
Microsoft Sam.
doing his thing. I do think also just another anime reference too for all those people out there who like it. He reminds me a lot of Pain from Naruto, where he has this network connected to him, which is another. It seems like a Japanese trope when some of these things where it's like all these tubes and wires coming down through their back or something like that.
Yeah, cables attached
he has-
to heads and backs.
Exactly, and he has connection to everything. He can
Mewtwo.
see all. So,
But it's not yet his final form.
not yet. He hasn't even gone over 9,000 yet, man.
I know.
All right, so let's talk about when Kuze takes over the 2 sanitation workers. This was somewhat faithfully taken from the anime. A lot of the shots here are replicated. I wonder how that sanitation worker had a camo suit, but I guess it's just...
Well, they conflated 2 different characters in this shot for, I guess, the sake of simplicity. But yeah, he had the thermoptic suit where he could go camo for whatever reason. And then they just had, guns in their garbage truck.
Yeah.
Made for a cool fight scene in the water, though.
It does make you think that it was already planned ahead of time, like a substantial amount of time ahead. So they kind of just like can go and tap into him whenever they want, and they're like, "All right, go get your camo suit and your guns, and then go hide them somewhere, and then eventually we'll tell you when."
And this is my main reason why I feel that Kuze is kind of a villain, because these are two innocent, unsuspecting workers. They're taken over by Kuze. Their minds are completely effed by some kind of program that he ran on them, and they believe things that they didn't believe. Like he inserts a different life into their minds.
Yeah, he's a daughter and a wife and a whole family and everything.
Yeah,
That was really sad.
yeah. So for me, Kuze didn't win any points. For me, is a good guy there. He's definitely a victim, though. I'll give you that.
And also, he's been, put past the point of no return too mentally. I feel like he isn't exactly sane. So you're trying to hold somebody to a higher standard who probably doesn't even have a full functioning brain.
And I feel like there's some truth to what Oulay says when she said that he has a violent mind, and there's a reason his mind or his ghost didn't take to his shell, because he was already kind of deranged. And they go into when Motoko finds out who she was and the whole boyfriend thing, that they were like rebels and freedom fighters or whatever kind of activists that he may have been already kind of off the hinges as it is.
Well, he must have been more on the angry side, where hers is more about helping people's side.
Yeah,
since they both kind of came from that sort of direction.
Yeah,
fight the system, man. Fight the system.
Yeah, but I'll call out the fight sequence again. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
That confrontation in the middle between all the buildings where she's invisible, just tossing him back and forth
in the water.
Yeah,
they did an excellent job of replicating the shots and the aesthetic of everything from the original here. There's some direct angles, camera scenes that are exactly lifted from the original. I feel like we lost a little bit of, character depth, because when the Major kind of finally breaks and catches him, and she just kind of starts wailing on him, just with the right hand cross, hit him. Whereas, again, I'll kind of call out, I just feel like her fighting style was a little bit clunkier, less graceful and skilled in this than it was in the original and what it could have been. But that's just kind of personal preference.
I did kind of chalk that up to what we were saying earlier, though, whereas she's not completely comfortable in a robotic shell of sorts. She gets the job done, but it's not as graceful, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if the Wikipedia article is going to go over it, but the boat scene, this probably be the best place to talk about that if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I think we're about to hit that, actually. Let me make sure.
But just before that, though, you, right before that fight goes down, you have them driving through the city on a kind of ground level, and you get to really see all the minute details that they put into creating this unique world, and it is actually insane how well they did. They you absolutely feel like you're in this world, or they're in whatever future.
Yeah, and you're coming up behind the everyday workers who just sitting there on their lunch break eating their sandwich, shooting the breeze. Again, I'll kind of call out where I missed some of the team tactics and camaraderie, where in the original they're kind of communicating from different multi-points of attack to trying to track these guys down and hack into their route, and step by step where he's making these dead drops calls and stuff and tracking this guy down, whereas here is just let's just find this guy and beat him up kind of thing. I didn't feel there wasn't a team concerted effort to do this operation.
Yeah. She kind of goes off on her own. That's kind of how this, I guess, differs. In this, she's kind of having a small version of a tantrum throughout the movie. She's just kind of doing a lot of emotionally based
on identity crisis.
I will say she is allowed a tantrum.
So,
no, absolutely. Yeah. But the point remains that she is ironically more human than robot.
Yeah, this goes into
just based off her decisions,
the better part,
and that's her whole dilemma.
Yeah, it goes into the better part of the plot, and it does explore a character deeper, where we go into the interrogation scene, and then the boat scene. And the interrogation cell had a
before we
lot
get
of,
to the boat scene actually happens after the whole Kuze scene where she is captured.
Okay.
So yeah, let's talk about that first. So
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so they are led. They find the coordinates to Kuze, and a fight ensues, and she is captured by Kuze, and then wakes up suspended in front of him, and that's our first actual physical introduction to his character. What did y'all think of this?
I think he's cool.
I remember my first thought when watching this movie and he showed up, I was thinking, is that a Skarsgård?
That's what I was
But
really
it wasn't.
So I do like the, kind of his delivery, the way he speaks, the way he walks. He's kind of broody. He's a little brooding, but
A little angry, but
I do like the performance, and I think
I actually really liked it a lot.
yeah, I think Michael Pitt pulls it off. So
I think there's an aspect of his character that comes across as sort of a orphaned, lost child. And so you start to kind of empathize with him in that moment because you see that it's almost like this is more coming from a place of rage and he doesn't have answers as to why. And he's just stuck alone in this dark place.
Yeah.
So I did think that was a very important moment for this film to develop his character.
yeah, he says this. There's this tragic line he drops after their interaction, which makes you really feel for him, where it's like, you want to kill me just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, and you start to you do feel sympathy for his character because you do realize he has only known people that want to destroy him.
Yeah.
And that's why he has these outbursts.
Exactly.
And-
No wonder he wants to kill
Also,
everybody.
I don't know if I misinterpreted this or didn't hear it correctly, but I was led to believe that he also doesn't fully understand why he is, and nobody will tell him what was taken from him. So he's just kind of left in this sort of limbo of a life where he can't quite define who he is and doesn't have a means to explain it.
Yeah, and this is when you learn that he wants Major to join with him. And you also start to learn that while Major does start to kind of identify with him, that they are also on two different levels, where Kuze, he wants to evolve past humanity because all he's ever been taught from humanity is animosity.
Pain and cruelty.
And he just he wants more power. He wants to supersede everything. Whereas Major she's more concerned about just who she is and what her actual place is in the world.
Right.
So that's the beginning of that kind of union, but also the rift
Kind of like a
between them.
mutual understanding that they both came from similar origins without actually agreeing on the politics of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is also establishing the fact that her story arc in general, while she is trying to figure out her past, I feel like a common theme in this film, and it kind of resonates now culturally, just this is always the big question now, is that identity crisis, like who am I? Not just literally what my past is, but who am I and what decisions am I going to make?
Yeah.
So whereas in the anime, it's more conceptually talking about what makes a human human, or what is the difference if a robot can create feeling or souls or something beyond.
Yeah. This is also when she learns that her medication has been suppressing her memories.
Oh,
And-
thanks, Oulay.
Yeah. So then, there's a reckoning in store. And she also learns that they share the same visions. So throughout this movie, she's been seeing kind of sporadic visions through day-to-day. Just
Right. Glitches.
yeah,
I
glitches.
was still confused about that, and I still am. So maybe someone here can clear that up for me.
So it'll come to a head at the end of this plot summary, but her and Kuze were actually friends.
Yeah, I got that much. But it
Before-
was like, hey, guess what? We share this thing in common. For some reason, we both see glitches of it.
So he had something tattooed on his chest that she recognized. And that it was one of her visions, and she was like, where'd you see that? What is that? What is that?
Yeah.
And so
I remember.
that's how. So what's
The
to explain then?
The glitches are actual events from her actual memory that have been repressed by her fake memories that are poking
Okay,
through
so
the fake memories.
it's her real memory popping through.
Right.
So essentially the thing you're speaking of is actually where they were taken from. They were both there.
You and Reese are explaining things I already got from the story. It's not explaining why they're seeing it, though. It's just kind of coming up, bubbling up to the surface, it sounds like. And I guess that one specific memory of that place meant something to both of them so strongly that it's coming up above everything else.
Yeah. All right.
I want to call out
Killian?
real quick a little
that's
prelude
where they
to
got
the
taken.
parallels between Kuze and the Major that happens right before with the interrogation of the garbage guy when he's being possessed, so to speak, by Kuze. There's a lot of stylistic choices that I really liked here with the glass cell and glass in general, and the reflection surfaces have a large motif in this movie, but they really line up where the Major, she approaches the glass and has Kuze hanging on in whatever straitjacket. They're face to face with the glass in between them, and the reflections have a mirror image of the Major herself right next to Kuze, and it mimics his movements. And that's when she starts realizing that there's a lot of these similarities between herself and the supposed terrorist, and
That's
really
cool.
starts questioning things.
Yeah. Killian confronts Oulay, who admits that 98 test subjects died before Killian, and that her memories are implanted. Cutter has decided that Killian is a liability and orders Oulay to kill her after she returns to Hanka Robotics. Instead, Oulay gives Killian an address and helps her escape. Cutter kills Oulay but blames Killian, saying that she has gone rogue. He informs Aramaki and the team that Killian must be terminated. So, what did y'all think about the kind of confrontation between, I won't even say confrontation, the moment where Major it is a confrontation.
it's a confrontation.
Where Major confronts Oulay.
I remember watching that scene and thinking, I never knew a woman could be so intimidating, but just that standing over her after she was like, I would not want to be that woman waking up from sleep and just seeing this cyborg standing right next to me, not talking, just kind of glaring at me. So.
Yeah.
Pretty imposing.
And Oulay is a complicated character. I would say she has good intentions.
Yeah.
But is so fascinated by the science of what she's dealing with that she's willing to, bend the rules
Overlook some
morally.
things.
Yeah.
Forget morality.
I think it's one of those things where it's like kind of the trope of we never stop to ask if we should do this. If we were just focused on can we do this.
The
And I
Jurassic
completely botched
Park
that delivery, but-
guideline.
Yeah.
I heard Jeff Goldblum, though.
I do get the sense that before Major, though, she had virtually no connection to any of the previous subjects. So she might have just been much more cold before meeting Major. Because Major, she kind of takes on a more maternal kind of relationship.
It worked, therefore I love you.
Yeah, I think she was definitely focused on the science of it, the end goal, and then she was temporarily allied with Cutter because he was a means to an end of the scientific advancement. And then, she got in bed with the devil, basically, and kind of got in over her head, I guess.
In the original anime, it's actually a male. It's not a female scientist.
Well, that's obvious because of all the nipples.
But yeah, the director actually thought that having her be a more maternal figure would enhance the character. And, I agree to some extent. I think that the gender swap works in this movie's favor in this case.
I think to add to the emotion, they needed that maternal aspect, the nurturing kind of motherly type, sort of trying to act as her surrogate in a way.
It does make her death a little more emotional.
It does.
Where she actually does end up on the good side and gives her memories back, tells her to run, which kind of results in her death. Because Cutter's just your typical villain who will just shoot someone if they do something bad.
Yeah.
But like, who's doing forensics on that scene that goes to see this was shot from this room into this room?
Dude, that guy's a real idiot. I didn't understand why he had to shoot through the glass. I was like, there's not a guarantee that would work
effect.
either. You could just move to the next room. She's not armed.
They're like
Anyway.
Cybernetics.
Yeah, I that's one of my main issues with this movie is just Cutter not being a more, I don't know, just a more developed villain. I wanted that moment. It still hits home in the end when he meets his demise, but I wanted it to hit even more. Like, I wanted to just really be in tune with the atrocities that this guy had
I
committed.
agree with you,
Like,
but I feel even more so because I didn't really care one way or another. Like, I thought his character was so flat that
yeah,
didn't
but I
give a
want
crap.
more. That's what I'm saying. It's
I know.
flat.
That's the dumb thing about characters like these. They're only motivated by money, 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 or whatever selfish
dollar
means
bills,
it
yeah.
is.
Power.
Yeah, but you have, dang it, what's his name? The other bad guy,
Kuze.
victim boy, over here, and he's a much more Kuze, and he's a much more complicated character. And if they had like made him more of a villain, it would have been really interesting. But at the same time, you don't want to lose out on his slight redemption.
Yeah.
In the end.
So Major takes a dip in the lake. She goes to contemplate down where there is no noise. AJ, you had things to say about this moment.
Oh, yeah. I thought this was kind of a big breakthrough for Batu and his character development and their relationship, really kind of emphasizing that, yes, these people are cybernetically enhanced, but they're still spirits, emphasizes the ghost part of the Ghost in the Shell. And there's really kind of a cool, I guess, stylistic choice that they added for this film when she's just kind of meditating at the bottom of the water. You see a bloom of jellyfish. And I think they chose jellyfish because jellyfish are kind of known to have like radially dispersed neurology, which kind of alludes to the AI and how everything's kind of dispersed and not centralized.
Right.
And how she's kind
interesting.
of part of the cyber net, the overall collective that Kuze is, and even more so in the anime too. But I thought that was a really cool nod and stylistic choice.
Yeah. It's a beautiful scene too. Just and then when we pull out and see Batu in his little fishing boat, or I guess that's what it is, and you just get the whole look at the landscape and the cityscape, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. This is when Batu really shows his true colors, even though you knew it all along. That he's like, yeah, I'm with you, and they affirm their trust to each other.
It's kind of cool that where it's set up is out in the water and on a boat, separated kind of more in nature than you could be in the cityscape. And it almost acts as a neutral ground, sort of off the record. This is what our standing is.
Was it just me, or did you love the way he like grabbed a beer and offered it to her, but then like she didn't want it, and then he threw it
He
back in the
just
thing?
chucked it.
I don't know why I love the how he did that.
His
It's such a
mannerisms.
small,
Yeah.
but
His mannerisms speak more words than he does,
yeah,
I think.
Pailu's great. He's like definitely the second best performance in this movie. I think Scarlett Johansson does an excellent job as Major and really commands this movie, but he's like definitely a great sidekick.
Secondary,
Yeah. Killian follows the address to an apartment occupied by a widowed mother who reveals that her daughter, Motoko Kusanagi, ran away from home a year ago and was arrested. While in custody, Motoko took her own life. Killian leaves and contacts Aramaki, who allows Cutter to remotely eavesdrop on their conversation. Bato, Togusa, and Aramaki eliminate Cutter's men trying to ambush them, while Killian follows her memories to the hideaway where Motoko was last seen. There, she and Kuze meet and recall their past lives as anti-augmentation radicals who were abducted by Henka as test subjects. The delivery of that was not great. Okay, so I was actually really moved by the mother-daughter interaction. And
I actually think that was one of my favorite parts of the entire movie.
And I want to say the actress, I don't have her name in front of me. She was not perfectly competent in the English language, and the delivery was a little awkward at first, but in her eyes, her acting was like all there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the moment she starts to recognize Major through how she looks at her. I thought that was such an emotional moment where
no, it's a really touching scene.
She could recognize her daughter through just how she was looking at her. And I believed that because I feel like the brain would command the eyes to look at someone the way that they would before.
Mannerisms, things like
and
that.
I do believe
the eyes are like the window to the soul.
So. And I believe a mother would recognize that.
Yeah.
And I thought they totally pulled off this moment where this was like one of the best moments in the movie for me, where I was like, oh, I'm so on board with this.
I love the sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say real briefly, I agree with you. This is one of the highlights of giving heart to the movie, where I feel like some of it was lacking elsewhere.
Yeah. And Scarlett Johansson does it too. She's like about to cry. She looks like she's about to cry.
Yeah.
And the mother, as she's leaving, is like, "Will you come back, or will you see me again?" It's like, it was just like, "Oh, yeah, I will."
And just,
it was
just
like,
the fact that the cat recognizes her and is immediately warm to her. And they kind of allude to that very beginning. She sees the glitch of the cat in her own apartment, and then Bato is like earlier in the car. He's talking about his dog. He's like, "I took you as a cat person."
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh, wait, her actual identity was a cat person.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool stylistic shots. I keep talking about style in this movie, but it's excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very much about
where
style.
they're sitting at the table and with down to tea, and it cuts back between the point of view of the Major, Matoku, and the mother. Everything is washed in green on Matoku's side, and everything's washed in orange on the mother's side. And green and orange are actually really heavily prominent in this movie and in the originals, whereas the original was actually all cast in green, kind of similar how The Matrix is. It's got a green tinge to it. Then they actually remade the film as a 2.0 updated version. They changed that green to an orange. But that green and orange are emotionally evocative, where green is kind of more cold and sterile, represents kind of the technological side, and the orange is obviously more warm and welcoming, the heart side. And it's really cool to see that juxtaposed directly back and forth, as she's finding, that line of her humanity versus her, cyborg mechanical self.
Mm-hmm. This movie's not given enough credit for these moments that are executed so well.
I do think that's the moment that pulled me back into the movie, watching it both times, actually. Because there is that sort of middle section where even though there are good parts, I start kind of losing interest.
Yeah.
And Noah and I talked about this, and I think it has more to do with how they chose to pace the movie.
Yeah.
Because even though it's good, it's slow, it's methodical, even the action sequences are quiet. It's slow-mo. It doesn't really have that same high action, high energy movie that you would expect. So it kind of like slows your heart rate down, and you kind of like get lost in the details, and then
feels
you
like a
drift off
depressant.
almost.
The aspect that the descriptive term that I usually use for these kind of films is hypnotic, where you're not quite focusing on the details all the time. You're just sort of enjoying the experience of it.
Mesmerized almost.
It sort of lulls you into a mood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so when it came to that emotional moment at the end, it was really nice because it brought out a completely different aspect that you were missing all movie.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, wait, there's something I need to invest in now. Not just staring at pretty things and hearing nice things.
I do think it carries this on to the end. Like from here, it's like it really tries to pack an emotional punch.
Right.
And I think for the most part, it succeeds, even though it hasn't totally earned it with certain characters. I do think it knows like when to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So.
What about we finally kind of see the gang go into high gear into support the Major with Aramaki in his office. He has this kind of confrontation with Cutter, and then he's like, I'm going to do what I need to do to protect him. He starts suspecting and taking Major's side and really trusting her intuition.
I like that a lot.
And another kind of little behind-the-scenes stylistic choice, his whole office is the only thing in this movie that has natural wood in it, or like his wood desk and the wood paneling in the room. Everything else is synthetic material. The desks are all like stone or glass, that kind of stuff, with a green background. So it's a really cool dichotomy too, where he's also one of the only
much
four
more
human characters.
Organic looking.
And then he pulls out the revolver with the leather holster, harkening back to, again, like the revolver's analog, the leather is an organic material.
Right.
and then versus the semi-automatics that everyone else is using that's kind of more mechanical.
Yeah.
There's really a lot of cool stylistic choices. And then he just kind of turns into the badass when he's about to be assassinated.
So good.
Such a cool
That was
scene.
one of my favorites too.
Where
Just
he-
even though it was
One
a
of those
small
good
little
lines.
bit, it made
Yeah.
me so good.
Yeah, don't
And that
send a
line
rabbit
where
to
he's
kill a
like-
fox.
Yeah, it's so good. And that's that scene where you've seen it so many times where it's like, oh, this is where Aramaki dies. You know? But no, it's no, he kills the guys and takes them
then
out.
he kinda
Kind,
scoffs
One of
the
the-
kind old man that you kind of liked.
One of the subtle things that I didn't notice the first time I watched it was whenever he does get in the car and you think, oh no, he's going to die. You can see him actually putting his suitcase up against the door.
Yeah, instead of on the other seat,
I
he
did
puts
not
it
notice that.
in between him.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
he ducks down at the very right
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
He's kind of like an Iroh, kind of an old man. You're like, oh, he's so fragile, and then
Yeah.
he comes out, it's like, oh crap, no, he will kill you.
Yeah.
Well, the
And
actor
this is
that
when
plays him is a really acclaimed
reference.
Japanese actor, maybe not
Yeah.
as well known in the West, but really well known.
Yeah.
It's Beat something. He goes by Beat. I'm not going to mess it up. Kitano, Takashi Kitano.
Okay.
I also like how they don't show the interaction. They show the men approaching Batu in his little, chair, just kind of enjoying his beer, and he just kind of smiles, and then they cut away and don't show that action sequence. But then the next moment, he is just driving to go save Major. I'm
It's like,
yeah,
it's just easy.
you already know Bato's going to take care of
Yeah, it's
business.
like there's no way. Yeah.
So I liked that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we also have the interaction between Motoko and now who is revealed to be Hideo at this, rundown kind of area where they used to hang out as they figure out that they were runaways and they were friends.
Yeah.
This is when she learns her kind of true past, I guess.
Yeah.
And she also learns that Hideo is really much more focused on vengeance.
Yeah.
And just evolving. And I've mentioned that multiple times already. But that's when she realizes she can't join him, but she kind of wishes him well. Like,
This is
good luck with your endeavors.
Yeah, this was a part where it's a very poignant moment that could have been pushed a little further if you weren't caught up in so many other issues. I feel like all the emotion was put into the whole, oh, my body's not my own, oh, my memories aren't even my own. But the one thing that really does hurt and sting a little is that she came from a group of people that were anti-augmentation. Like, that was something that she thought was wrong. And so she was forced into a lifestyle where she's almost completely augmented.
And she was killed by police or Henka's men.
Yeah.
Or it's not really clearly defined, but it's kind of like...
Yeah, so basically from the get-go, she was taken from her own rights as a human to even choose whether she wanted that or not. And enslaved basically into the system.
Yeah, and we
This
didn't
is
talk
another-
about it. The whole consent thing, that's a pretty repeated line in this movie.
Definitely.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
that,
yeah, I
I
was
forgot
thinking
about
I
that.
do not
That was-
consent. That part
that-
was just...
And, and then they responded with, "We never needed your consent" or something
Yeah.
like that, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that gave me chills." Actually,
Yeah.
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 But that was a good moment of Oulay like selling to Cutter that, oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm going to kill her. Like she had to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
that was a good moment.
Oh, but then her words are given power in the end again
Oh,
too,
yeah.
which I
Yeah.
love because we'll get to it. I'll just move
Yeah.
on. Cutter deploys a spider tank to kill them. Kuze nearly dies before Killian is able to tear off the tank's motor, losing an arm in the process. Mortally wounded, Kuze offers to merge his ghost with Killian's, but Killian refuses. Kuze fades out, then a Henka sniper kills him. Bato and the team rescue Killian, while Aramaki executes Cutter with Killian's consent. The next day, now repaired and embracing her true identity as the Japanese Motoko, Killian reconnects with her mother and returns to work with Section 9. And cut to credits.
They love their spiders.
Super cool ending.
Yeah. It was so good. And the music kicks in again.
Yeah.
It really brings you back into it.
Yeah. This is the only real like set piece in this movie. It's like, oh, there's a spider tank battle, and it's the only thing that I point to as like an actual action set piece where
Right.
like even this scene though, it's over and done with pretty quickly. Like it's not like it doesn't hit you over the head with action. constantly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it culminates in that awesome moment with her just ripping her full force, just
Yeah.
ripping
It's actually
herself
less
apart.
about the action and more about her as a character going through that, which is interesting because I kind of did want a little more action personally. But that part where her muscles are tearing and her arm rips off is just it's very impactful.
I think to me, it is in the anime too, but to me, it kind of represents, from my perspective, the fact that the human spirit is stronger than the robotic augmentation, because obviously it's tearing her body apart, but even through that, she's pushing to rip that off. So
That's human
That's a
for you.
super
Yeah.
cool insight there. I wasn't even really thinking of it, but I actually fully agree.
I feel like this movie strongly leans into your humanity, and your decisions are what define you, not, augmentation and the encroaching of technology is seen as more negative in this light. In the anime, I didn't really get the impression of technology being negative. It was more just philosophical. But with this one, it definitely feels like you kind of going back to the human spirit and integrity and basically defining yourself.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, AJ, but I think this is the moment where the film kind of refutes the anime in a way.
Yep.
Where,
It does.
And it kind of does it directly, where Kuze's asking to join with her, and she refuses. Where, what I remember, the anime, she did, or Kuze does infiltrate her mind, and they do join, and they evolve.
And I wouldn't say
past-
infiltrate. It was, I guess, to use the term here, she gave her consent really to kind of explore what she could be more as a bigger being. But yeah, right. This is where they departed from the original, directly took 180-degree turn, and obviously appealed to more of a Western sentimentality, than something like the original.
Yeah, and
Also, with that spider tank fight, if I recall from the anime, she didn't actually succeed in breaking it. She just was trying to tear at it, and her arms and legs broke.
Yeah, that was
and
accurate.
then
Bato shows up with the
big
gun.
rocket launches it, and it explodes.
Oh, there was I should have wrote it down, but there's a
Yeah.
cool line where it's like, is she safe? And one guy's like, she will be. And they snipe the helicopter down. It was
was
just
cool.
like so cool. I just love that her team has her back.
That
even
did
if
bring that team aspect
Yeah.
there. It was pretty cool.
and then Bato's kind of cradling her in the end. And I
Tell me something
Really?
nice.
I'm not even kidding. This movie almost brought a tear to my eye. And it sounds stupid to say it for Ghost in the Shell.
Well, it is touching.
This live action remake, but I just loved their relationship, and it was so cool how much you saw that he respected her and he was there for her, and vice versa. And then she is ultimately given the power of consent, that the actual consent, and the results in the death of Cutter by means of Aramaki, which was...
He's such a good guy. When you think of it.
And I love how immediate the gunshot was after she said, "I consent." It's
Yeah.
like split second, he just shoots the
no
guy.
question. Yes.
I guess.
That's so awesome.
I know you don't
went
like
on
it.
the cheese a little heavily, but
They did.
The cheesy part is that the guy's standing right in front of a cool little pool to fall into.
Yeah.
And Cutter also just sucks as a villain.
and also that he's the director of the department. And he's just like, oh, let's screw with the prime minister says bringing this guy to trial or whatever. Let's just shoot him right here.
But I thought it completed the emotional arc of Major's character in such a satisfying way.
I consent to it.
Yeah. For me, it was
No
emotional,
one
and
needs
I
your
liked
consent.
Her line was, tell him this is justice. It's what I was built for.
it. Yes. Oh, and it's so perfect. It's perfect, guys. Sorry. I liked it.
No, the end really hits home emotionally.
Yeah.
I thought that was also
Almost weirdly, like the whole movie, I wasn't expecting anything emotional, and then the last 30 minutes, I'm like, wait, what's happening?
What's happening?
emotions.
It's feelings in my chest.
And seeing... So I want to get y'all's opinion on this. So I've read that this was Kuze's death when he kind of like fades out, but I also read that it's him entering like a greater state where he's like part of the network now, or he's moving on to a different body.
I thought he was merging into her because he said, "I will always be with you."
It was very ambiguous. I didn't quite understand, but what I do know is that when I watched it both times, I didn't think he was dead. I just don't know what happened. Like I was like, he went somewhere. He looked like he knew what he was doing.
I got the impression he was just moving on to a different body, or just being.
In my thought process was that he was gone because in this movie he established all of his power, his own network via the human slaves' minds that he was using, harnessing their neurological power to create his own network, and that's the realm that he operated in order to kind of influence things. That's why he had to take over other people's bodies to enact physical actions. Whereas like the puppet master and the other one, he was actually infiltrated
Right.
more deeply into all of society, and he could even like hack into the major director or Batu directly and have influence that way. So that was just my take.
I will say they didn't quite spell it out for the audience.
Well, I think that was the point, though.
Open to interpretation,
I'm
I
okay
guess.
with it.
All right, so we get the final moments. Major goes to visit her now that she knows it's her mother. Mm-hmm. It was cool too because she's the way this actually she doesn't go to visit her mother. She's going to visit her own grave, and her mother was going to visit her grave as well. And that's when the mother knew for sure, oh, it's her because she's visiting her own grave. And that was a great little moment too. And then we get I don't know, it's not a tease for the sequel moment, but it's also like, oh, now she's going to continue and, go on with Section 9 with her team, and then it cuts to credits. So what'd y'all think of the closing moments?
I like the whole ending.
It's very, very American.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, her character is, I'm a misfit. I don't really fit in anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then by the end, it's, oh, your individuality is what makes you unique, and use it as your weapon, your armor, your shield, message. Whatever. It's very, very, very Western. But, I mean, in a cheesy, sappy way, still satisfying.
Well, I'm Western, and I like it.
Yeah, me too. I'm not even going to say it's a guilty pleasure, this movie. I just really like it, and I think it's well done. I understand why certain people don't like it. Certain people in this podcast might not even like it, but it hits all of the sweet spots for me.
I am very interested in knowing where these scores lie at the end.
Yeah, I know. We're going to see here pretty soon. All right, so that closes out the story. We're going to talk about this franchise and give our brief reviews on the other end. So we'll see you then.
Sad.
Welcome back. We're here to talk about Ghost in the Shell, give our brief reviews, and talk about this franchise as a whole.
What happened to it?
Yeah. So this time we've got our reviews in a little basket. They will be drawn.
They're little Easter eggs.
Yeah, at random. Very festive.
I was excited to do this.
So brief reviews. We're just going to talk about the movie and give a score. That's all there is to it. So draw our first.
I have my first blue egg. Let's open it.
That
it's
sounds
a boy.
wrong.
It's Noah
Hey, it's me.
with a 7.5.
Okay. Okay.
Ring, ding, ding.
Yeah. So, this movie, both philosophically and visually, is very impressive, and I really enjoyed all those aspects of it, along with just the kind of camaraderie that the characters have. There's just a lot to like about this movie. I think it's extremely underrated, and pretty much the only reason I docked it, the few points that I did, is because of the fact that it kind of lulls in the middle of it, and it's whether the story is pertinent at that point or not, which I'd say it is. It kind of had me sleeping a little bit.
Kind of had me
Quite
sleeping.
literally.
Literally sleeping. And the second time I watched it, I was pretty tired too during that portion. There's something about it that is kind of a depressant to me, and
it pumps the brakes a little
Like
bit.
Irina said, hypnotic in a way.
Yeah. So I won't say it's necessarily a negative aspect of it, but
It doesn't work for you almost.
yeah, it kind of just makes me tired. And
It doesn't
It's
sound
fair.
very
It's
positive.
well, the thing is,
I know what you mean.
it's
though. Yeah.
not through their own fault. It's because my mind is used to kind of a level of
Faster
energy
pace.
that keeps it attracted. But it's perfectly solid throughout the meat of it. It just didn't have.
Yeah.
It just put me to sleep. There's no good
so,
way
like,
to say that.
Every time you say "put me to sleep," you have that slow wave saying it, and you're like, "Yeah, that doesn't sound good."
There's no good way to say it.
All right, let's just draw the next Easter egg.
But yeah, I did love the emotionality of the ending, especially, and that really brought it home for me. That was my favorite aspect of
Yeah, it
the
really
movie.
peaks at the end, which I
even
think
if
helps.
there are cheesy aspects of it.
All right.
There we go.
Next one is AJ with a 7.5.
All right.
So I'll try to monologue too much here, but I have a lot of thoughts on this movie.
Do what you got to do, man.
Please go ahead.
Got
So-
me monologuing.
Let's say the thesis of this review is this live action remake missed the ghost part while focusing on the shell. So obviously, beautiful movie to look at visually, aesthetically. Everything stylistically, you can nitpick all these details, and I think they're amazing, great choices, and just a lot of details and a lot of thought went into them. Score is great. That really kind of give a really good tone to this movie. Unfortunately, I feel like the superficial part, once you look past that part, there's not a whole lot of depth to the emotional substance of it. At least the message of the original I thought was more poignant than this one. And I think that's a product of the Hollywoodification of it, the westernization of it. And there's always the argument of, just make a shot-for-shot remake or, adapt it to your audience. This one, I feel like you may maybe not have to do a completely faithful remake of it, but I feel like the message got muddied by adding the whole American ego thing and the identity of self and while consent is not a bad thing, I'm not ripping on it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like just adding, I have to give my consent for this kind of just muddies the waters of where, a Western Japanese audience, they kind of might more identify with her giving in to something bigger, joining the AI of the puppet master in the original. And I feel like Scarlett Johansson did an amazing job mechanically as an actress. She was really methodical about choosing how she portrayed the major, down to her, her physicality, everything she chose to do from posture and delivery, but I didn't get the emotional depth that came across from the character. And I think what hurt that was we were immediately from the get-go hit over the head with her brooding, who am I, kind of just uncertainty. So there wasn't a lot of dynamic range of character to go. It's like in the original, she was calm, cool, and collected, self-assured. She knew what she was doing. People looked up to her, respected her. Just general badass, and she knew what she was doing. And then, it kind of gets a wrench in her gears and gets thrown off balance, and then finally starts kind of having a self-identity crisis and looking at the world differently from, humanistic side of things. There's more dynamic range, and there was somewhere to go as a character development arc. And I just didn't get this in this version because from the get-go, it was just all kind of brooding and not woe is me, but just the whole uncertainty just kind of dragged on. And I will take a harder stance, unlike Noah, that it did drag on too long. There were some pacing issues, especially in the middle, where, the original anime was 25 minutes shorter than this one, but I felt like it got more action done. And I missed the procedural aspect of it, the team, and I almost feel like they almost focused on the major too much in this movie versus the overall world. Because I think people want to see an origin story and where someone comes from, but
It did have an origin story feel a little bit.
And I didn't feel Cutter was obviously two-dimensional flat villain. I didn't really like Kuze as a villain as much as I liked the Puppet Master. In the original, I felt like he was more kind of like an Ultron figure with the AI kind of infecting everything and just going rampant. But in the original, in this film, instead of Ultron just kind of being outwardly exposed and aggressive, the puppet master was more menacing and foreboding and hiding in the shadows and striking opportunistically. And it was just kind of more eerie and really felt like a threat, whereas Kuze was just kind of like a failed experiment that went wrong and was kind of psycho. And it just didn't feel like it was a big global threat, because you didn't also feel like the political intrigue of Section 6 versus Section 9, the inner workings of black wet works and creating this as a, kind of a war machine to destabilize governments and economies. And he kind of goes rogue and gets lost in everything. And it was just, this guy's trying to out to make money, and created this guy, and he was just discarded because he was crazy already. And I don't know, it just didn't feel as nuanced. And I feel like there's something to be said about respecting cultural differences and appreciating art, even though you may not directly identify with it, because we all know as Americans that we're taught identity first, ego number one, look out for number one, instead of maybe a more Eastern societal outlook. But I feel like that adds to the artistry instead of detracts from it. It's more of something that you can appreciate, or more thought-provoking, I guess. Whereas this one's kind of spoon-feeding you, hey, we're just, throwing out hot topic buzzwords like consent and things like that and trying to make it relevant. I feel like if they toned back the Major's screen time a little bit, added a bit more character development from the side characters, the support cast, and had a little bit more dynamic range of her development from starting out as a stable, strong, confident person, then kind of degrading a little bit, having that identity crisis, it would have worked a lot better, especially because of how beautiful this movie is, visually. That's what took it down to a 7.5, because I think it's a 10 visually. I think there's so many good decisions that were made intentionally on just the nitty gritty of this, that kind of the spirit of it, or the ghost of it, got lost.
Very metaphorical of you, just like the movie.
I got no strings on me.
I think Kuze is better than Ultron. I said it.
Well, I think the Puppet Master is better than Ultron, because I felt he was more menacing. In this one, I just felt like he's just like kind of a broken psyche that just got lost and is kind of throwing a fly in the, I don't know, I'm losing my idioms here. He's just kind of an annoyance, whereas in the original he was like a global threat, because he was so kind of intertwined in everything and just hidden and a big major unknown factor, because they were doing the procedural groundwork, investigating, trying to track him down, doing, I don't know. I'll stop talking.
You had a lot to say.
So that was a 9.5 from AJ. No, just kidding. 7.5.
So we got two 7.5s.
Yeah, next
Let's see
one.
what we got next. We have Reese with an 8.5.
I didn't want to follow AJ. 8.5. I stand by my 8.5, guys. I'll get my issues out of the way first. I do wish they had built the team dynamic of this a little bit more, so that moment hit harder at the end when they have her back. But, and also I will say Cutter is just a villain that, okay, he's a villain, he's dead, cool, he's out of the way, I don't care, whatever.
Yeah.
But it is all in service of something that I feel like this movie really nails. And I do like the emphasis on Major. I like that she is the leading lady of this movie. Like, Scarlett Johansson, I think, owns this performance. And I think it's actually a harder performance to pull off than most people think. You act robotic, but also human, but not too robotic to the point where it's like, oh, that's a person acting like a robot. There's a lot of eye work that needs to be done. And just the delivery of every sentence it's much more calculated, but it also has to sound like there's life in there.
Right.
And I think she totally nails that. And I think that's why this movie is centralized on her, because it's important to convey all of that. And I think that's why most all of the other characters are pushed to the wayside. And I'll take a lesser team dynamic or a less fleshed out team dynamic in favor of a stronger major character, at least in my opinion. And this is like, I'm trying not to compare it to the original anime and give it its own. I'm not saying it's wrong to compare it, because it's definitely completely based off of that, and it owes everything to that original. But as its own piece, I think it delivers a great central character and gives her a full and complete emotional arc. And I like the gradual change of her character into someone that you actually feel for. And just what clutched it for me was that mother-daughter moment where I was like, okay, this is something that I hadn't seen in the anime that I feel like it was missing, where I have an emotional connection to Major where I didn't feel like I had it before. And I know that's controversial because I've said it many times that original anime is a classic and everyone hates this new movie for even trying to do something different. I'm sorry. But for me, it worked. And importantly, they kept of the team, they did at least keep the most important aspect of that team, and that is Bato. And I think Bato is also pulled off perfectly by Pailu Esbeek or whatever his name is. Their camaraderie, I enjoyed every second they were together. And on top of all this, you have just an amazing aesthetic. This movie looks phenomenal. I think the action, while it could have been executed slightly better or could have been punchier, could have engaged its audience more, I still feel like it delivers. Yes, and I will acknowledge that there is a lull in the middle of this movie, and this movie does feel longer than it actually is. It's actually a pretty short film. It's only an hour and 46 minutes compared to most other...
I thought it was over 2 hours.
Yeah, it's not. But it does feel... It's like... It's very leisurely.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with an unconventional, big-budget movie that's like, hey, guys, let's slow down for a second. Maybe it's more a fault of mine for... not being patient with it, but I don't know. It could also just be like it needed some work on the pacing. But
I think you just like Rupert Sanders a lot.
I do like this guy. I do think he is. I will agree with AJ that he is sometimes aesthetic over substance, where he's just really focused on getting every single visual detail, audio detail correct, and then he touches up the characters. But I don't know what his process is, but there is something to that. I do feel like he has improved, though. This compared to Snow White and the Huntsman, I think this movie is vastly superior. I think he is trying to at least have a character with an emotional core that you can kind of feel for. For the most part, in my opinion, he succeeds. So I'm going to stick by my 8.5. It's not a perfect movie, but for some reason, this movie just, it gets me. It's maybe, call it what you will, call it a guilty pleasure. I don't call it that, but if that makes you feel better, whatever. For me, it just works. I like this movie. So
all right.
Yeah.
So we got Irina and myself left. Let's see who gets up next. Irina with an 8 with a subsection, don't hate.
8, don't hate.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick by that one. I think that is a very appropriate score for this film, because while I do understand the backlash as far as westernizing or whitewashing, that's a
Which
whole
we'll
other,
talk about. Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation. I feel that a lot of people for animes like Ghost in the Shell, that connected with them, and I've been accused of doing this before, but something that I either grew up on or felt closely related to, and I didn't want sabotaged by Western or Hollywood culture. Often I cannot see past that and appreciate it for what it is, because it's just kind of butchered my love for something. I have to separate this from the anime, though, and while I do love what the anime has done, I also love this interpretation of it, where it does create some aspects that are hearkening back to the anime, giving it its due respect. It also decides, you know what, we can't completely re-envision what that masterpiece was, but we have to find our own story arc and our own moral grounding here and what message do we want to convey through this world. And I think they did a good job with that. I believe that it did get a little lost in the middle. There are some times where I can't understand what the connections are between people. And while they were hyper focused on her own kind of personal emotions, they missed some really important thematic plot points that I think could have been embellished more. Overall, I think it did a good balance of creating a strong female lead that wasn't pushing too far in the direction of rah-rah feminism, you know? Like there are so many movies that are obviously trying to push those buttons. They did it a little with the whole consent thing, but at least it was done in a way that was a little more impactful, you know, a little more heartfelt. Whereas in others, they're just kind of trying to get those girl points, people, you know, just trying to approve of the message. So yeah, I think I'll stick with that 8.
Awesome.
All right.
Nifty.
And I don't think I really need to, bust my egg
pop
there.
it.
No, pop the egg.
All
Get
right,
this
all
one.
right. David, I know you want to.
Oh gosh, I broke it.
It's worth exploding.
I literally broke it. Okay, whoops.
Nice job,
See,
David.
I shouldn't have done it. I should have just stuck with my instinct.
There's a
and
sign.
not.
You shouldn't read your review.
My review is a 7.
Lowest
Sounds familiar.
Lowest score, but
That does sound familiar.
what was that?
Are we doing
what
this
was
again?
that? Where have I heard that
Where have I
7
heard
before?
this
Something
7?
about a dragon?
Something with
were
a
there
2?
mummies?
the more you guys do this,
Emperor.
the more you'll find that I'm just going to not give any more 7s. I'm just going to always give 7.5.
But you have to. You have to be honest with yourself.
7.1.
For the record,
No.
anyone that's new to the podcast, David gave Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7. Continue, David.
Oh, thanks for that segue. I gave this one a 7.
Was
Now,
it the rewatchability factor?
Guess what? No one knows about this.
Was it that every frame of the movie you could just like take a freeze frame of it and it'd look great?
Actually, yes. That actually does tie into it, which
That
is
does apply.
aesthetics wise. I think that is the driving factor behind this entire movie. If you took it away, it wouldn't be what it is. And
That is true.
I think that if your driving force is just the aesthetics, which personally I think also the writing was really good. The delivery I think was hit or miss in some areas, but just alone I can give it a 7 from those.
Yeah.
It lulled like everyone else has said. I drifted both times I watched it. I think it needed a little more fleshing out as far as characters and action sequences. It didn't, and it's also just not my normal aesthetic. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, so it's personal preference.
Yeah,
not
personal
really
preference.
Yeah.
I do think that's what it boils down to with this.
Yeah, if you're into these kind of movies, it's great. But it's just a slow-paced action, which is like an oxymoron.
I'm honestly like analyzing why I like this movie and other people don't, and I do think aesthetic really does help.
Oh, yeah.
Because I am so willing to forgive other aspects of a movie if it just like it's dialed my number. You know, like it looks so good, so I'm willing to look further into it and maybe forgive it for certain things that it does. But keep going. Sorry.
Well, it's just funny because aesthetically, you can't almost fault it at all. It's near perfect as far as aesthetics go. The writing, the reason I realized the writing is so good is because some of these deliveries, and I know they're supposed to be intentional, like Scarlett Johansson's supposed to be this almost wooden, metallic sort of robot-y responsive. I didn't quite feel that same connection to her. I think she's probably my third favorite character in this movie.
Wow.
Where she's like 90% of the movie. But the words that she says are impactful. It's not really her delivery. So I credit more to the writing than her actual acting. And I think the same thing goes for Batu. I think we say it both ways.
It's Bato.
Yeah. I think that he was actually better, in my opinion. And
I agree with
I don't
that.
know.
Even though he didn't have eyes for most of the film.
Yeah, I think that they fleshed out his character, gave him more
They're tactical.
emotion, and I knew more about him rather than this moody, sort of flat, energetic character. So in the end, 7 based on aesthetic and writing.
Mind if I comment on aesthetic real quick?
No.
Okay. Well, I still will.
Do it. I do
Looks
not
like he doesn't
consent.
mind.
Your consent doesn't
do not
matter.
You make a
Consent.
good point, but he was doesn't matter. Anyways, one of the things about the aesthetic of this movie is that it's not even just aesthetic. The reason why it gets so much credit here is because it literally built an entire world.
Yeah.
It well, maybe not literally, but
It's Legos.
but they built an entire kind of system just around the story that just fits, and it's really immersive, and that's what's so important about aesthetic in film. It should get a lot of points for that because it's not just superficial.
I mean, you think about it, and most of the production of a film goes into the building of sets and the, as you said, aesthetic of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely helps
With the immersion.
pull you in. Yeah.
Anyways,
But,
that's all I'll say about that.
So between all of those, though, I feel like compared to most movies, we are actually more aligned on this one than any of them, really. I mean, it's only like a 1.5 swing.
We are more positive than the consensus, the critical consensus of this movie, and even the audience overall. It wasn't negatively reviewed. I suppose I should just get to it.
Before that, there's one thing. The reason why its score might have been affected is due to...
I'm gonna bring that up.
Okay, you will?
Yes.
That's what
All
we're
right.
getting into.
It's funny. I knew exactly what you were talking about, and I think this movie gets unfairly crucified for that.
Agreed.
But the Rotten Tomatoes for this movie was 44,
Ooh.
with an audience rating of not much better, with 51. Metacritic 52, which is actually not bad. It's actually pretty decent.
Metacritic's not usually above those other two, though, right?
Metacritic is harder to get a very high score. Their system is weird, and I don't even really know how it works. But 52 is not bad on Metacritic, with a user score of 6.8 and an IMDb score, which is all audience/user scores, of 6.3.
That's a little more fair.
So overall, very just mixed across the board. Literally every site you go to is just mixed with Ghost in the Shell.
I wonder why that is.
So yeah, there's some controversy behind this movie. The whole whitewashing. The casting of Scarlett Johansson was heavily...
lean back. I could feel it.
Yeah.
We had a long conversation about this.
I can hear the rage.
We had a long conversation about this.
And I'm not going to say it's the main reason this movie has negative negative reviews. I genuinely believe that there are critics and audience members that just were not into this movie. But yeah, this movie was heavily criticized for casting Scarlett Johansson in the lead role when they felt like it was a good opportunity for a Japanese or Asian actress to take a lead. So you have something to say about that, Noah?
Yeah, it's completely unfounded. So the director of the anime himself said he didn't see any problem with the fact that they cast her, because not only is the world that they created multinational, but it makes sense with the fact that it's not even her body, which is one of the main themes of the movie. So I'll like quote him exactly what he says, but he literally what his name is
Mamoru Oshii.
Yeah, so he's quoted as saying, "What issue could there possibly be with casting her? The name Motoko Kusanagi and her current body are not her original name and body, so there is no basis for saying that an Asian actress must portray her. I can only sense a political motive from the people opposing it, and I believe artistic expression must be free from politics."
Yeah. I will say it's easy for us to, as white people, talk about this being okay, and that just makes us look...
Yeah, that makes me feel
Speak
weird.
for yourself.
We don't know what AJ
Well, the thing
AJ
is,
doesn't know
there
what
are
AJ
some
is.
things that I can point at and definitively say, okay, that was not appropriate. Like, for example, apparently there was a Harriet Tubman movie, and they were trying to cast, what's her name? She was some big white actress
As Harriet Tubman?
as Harriet
Why would
Tubman.
you
And that
See,
is a
that's
ridiculous.
completely
Robert
different,
Downey
though.
Jr.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if anyone's going to do it,
That would be so good.
Gosh, but yeah, well, the point remains. There are so many more glaring examples of
So
where that problem lies, or of
Yeah.
whitewashing,
I think this is
than this one.
This is one of those things where it's about the storyline, the character arc. If changing the race of the character changes the point of the story, then it's inappropriate.
I feel like any person, any race, any color could embody this character. That's the point of what it is.
Yeah, it wouldn't change the story at all.
It's just the major is not, she's not defined by race.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, what caused the most rage about this was just the fact that Scarlett Johansson at this time has been in so much already. Like that,
Yeah.
I think
So couldn't you give it to someone that needs it more?
Yeah.
Like
the only irritation I could see with this is, but she's in Marvel, she's the highest paid actress. Like, can't they just find someone that's a no name to embody this character?
But the thing, you also have to consider that it takes a high name actress to bring something so niche like Ghost in the Shell to a broad audience. Where it,
Well,
I feel
would
like
I
see
would
your point,
disagree
and then I'll
there.
raise you Ex Machina. Ex
Yeah.
Machina
True.
has a lot of overlap in this, and I agree with Irina here. Well, I don't know if she's arguing that point, but I'm of the opinion that she's almost too big of a name, and it's Hollywood. It's the difference
Yeah.
between a blockbuster film and an independent film, where I feel like maybe a lower, maybe not a household name, but a respected actress could pull off the character and maybe have more agency to add their take to it. I'm not saying Scarlett Johansson's not
Right.
talented by any means,
Right.
but there are also other talented people out there, regardless of race. And I always point an example of this is the Lord of the Rings. You have Ian McKellen and other big stars now, but you don't have a whole lot of star power in that movie. Viggo Mortensen. I mean, what would we have gotten if we just had a bunch of A-list names in that movie?
Well, yeah, Sean Connery, who was
Right.
could have played
Who
Gandalf.
could have played
Scarlett
Gandalf.
Johansson was
Yeah.
supposedly one of the front runners for being Lisbeth Salander in the remake that we talked about versus Rooney Mara.
Yes.
So what we have gotten then in that movie, and actually the reason that Fincher did not choose, well, the quoted one of the reasons is that she was too attractive. There's too much sex appeal. And I feel like, a Hollywood blockbuster, they're definitely banking on some brand, name recognition, the sex appeal. You're putting an actress in a skin-tight, body-conforming thermoptic suit. So, I mean, there's obviously that aspect of things to consider that draws audiences in to bring it more
Right.
mainstream. And that's where I kind of wish that it didn't get the Hollywood treatment and maybe had a good budget, but maybe a little bit more independent take. And see
I
what
will
we
say
got with
though,
that.
Scarlett Johansson is not a stranger to independent films.
Sure.
Yeah.
Under the Skin, case in point, I honestly think that's a movie that helped her get this role in Ghost in the Shell because she plays kind of an alien who is just taking men and just reducing them into nothingness and consuming them. It is much more understated for her, and I feel like it's a movie that goes kind of hand in hand with Ex Machina almost in a weird way. You got to see Under the Skin. That's a weird horror indie movie.
I feel like you're going to make me watch it within the next 3 months.
yeah, no,
Probably.
it's so good.
Sorry, do you mind if I go back?
Yeah, you can go back.
Yeah. So that movie I was talking about earlier, the Harriet Tubman one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was gonna be Julia Roberts.
What?
Julia Roberts
God.
as Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman, a black movement leader.
Yeah.
That just
It's
sounds-
awful.
Yeah,
Are
that
you,
sounds
did you just look
terrible
that up
idea.
on your phone?
Yeah.
That is idiotic.
It is
Like-
it's absolutely
See,
stupid.
that's the difference between Ghost in the Shell and something like that, or like it's like if you had a white person playing Mulan. Like
Yeah.
I
it
brought
just,
that up yesterday, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just that's
ruins
a
the
definite
point.
like you
Yeah.
cannot have a
This-
white person play Mulan.
This is kind of what I was coming to yesterday. I was playing a little bit of devil's advocate with Noah yesterday, which was he was on the side like this is unfounded, this is stupid, people, and I was kind of throwing him curveballs just to see sort of his opinion on, what if this is, whitewash, and and I didn't even believe myself really because I don't truly believe that this is one of those occasions. I think that in Hollywood history, it has been an inherent problem that a lot of situations they've done it. And
Yeah.
slowly they've been getting better and better.
Okay, maybe this movie would have been. I'm not going to say it wouldn't have been better with an Asian actress. Maybe it would have been, but I feel like anyone you pick for this would have been fine, as long as
Eddie
they
Murphy?
gave a no. Come on, as long as they gave a committed performance and really tried to embody the character of Major. Any race, just go for it. Give it your all. I don't care. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Ghost in the Bollywood.
Should we go into box office?
Yeah, let's move into box office. We've spent a lot of time here. So, guys, this movie cost 100. There's various reports, 110 to 120 million.
That's actually a lot less than I would have guessed.
Yeah, it looks really good for the budget, and I think that's because there's not a emphasis on huge action set pieces, and it's
True. Yeah. More CGI based.
and it's a shorter film. But yeah, the star power of Scarlett Johansson, you think that has to cost a pretty penny and everything else. But 110, 120 million. Do you guys have guesses on how much this film made worldwide?
200.
When did this
200?
release?
Oh, worldwide.
2017.
No, I mean
200?
like time of year, like spring, summer.
It was like March. It was like March, before summer, right before summer season.
Are we doing overall or like first weekend?
Worldwide, overall.
Overall, ooh, 250.
You said 120. I want to say 245.
All right, Irina?
That's terribly close to mine.
Yes, it is.
246.
Irina's like, I have a very small margin.
AJ, you have a guess?
200. I don't think it made that much.
200. The movie made 170
Dang it!
million.
I was close to my first one.
Yeah, it was a bomb. It
Gosh.
bombed. This movie didn't even make double its budget.
That is sad.
It did pass its budget though, so
Yeah.
it's not like
Is that marketing cost
It's-
included? And
no, this is not marketing not
We've
included.
discussed this. It's never included.
I will
Well,
say it's not
sometimes it
a
is.
utter embarrassment. People showed up and saw it, but it just wasn't nearly to the volume that they wanted.
I'm really curious
yeah,
how
this
many
movie-
people of the general audience was familiar with the original work and if they knew what they were getting into when they saw it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how to look that
that
up.
might,
I
that might have put
feel-
people off.
I think my impression is that hardcore fans or people that are very familiar with the anime probably saw Scarlett Johansson there and decided, nope, not going to watch it.
That's not my major.
That's what I feel I would do. If
Are you serious?
I were in
Scarlett
that
Johansson in a
position.
skin tight suit? I'm pretty sure that appealed to all of that audience.
No,
should.
I think to certain ones maybe, but I don't know. I think there's at least for me, as far as my fandoms go, seeing something displayed on the large screen with oh yeah, that's just the most popular actress right now, would have bothered me because it would detract from the main point of the anime or whatever the work was.
Yeah. So this gets into our sequel prospects. There weren't any.
There wasn't. Just stop. There wasn't.
There wasn't ever any clearly defined evidence of a sequel being made or wanting to be made, but the anime has multiple. The anime at least has a sequel, Ghost in the Shell 2, Innocence. There's multiple TV series. The manga has multiple parts. It is a story that goes on in all of the other mediums. So, and also, Scarlett Johansson had interest. She claimed, or at least she was quoted in saying that she was interested in starring in a sequel. And this was before the release, before it had disappointing box office returns. But there was obviously, like, if this movie were successful, they would come up with something, as they do. Because, Major's got other missions to go on, So,
It did seem like she was invested in this character. She
and
enjoyed it.
yeah, and the movie does, as AJ and other people have stated, it does seem origin story-ish.
Yeah,
No, wait,
definitely.
you said that, didn't you, Irina?
Did I?
Did
I
you?
said it.
I don't
I
know.
thought someone else did.
No, you did, Reese.
I said it too after someone else said it.
Andrew
I
said,
said
it,
it.
and then AJ said
Okay,
it.
yeah, AJ, you
And
said it.
then-
Yeah, it has it's a very origin story like. So like, I would like to see the missions that
Yeah.
Major goes on after this. I want to see what happens.
Me too.
Yeah, it could be 7 films, Noah.
7.
Of which
3.
all David will think
I just
are
feel like-
sevens.
I mean, I don't know. Like they were obviously seeking profit here. That's the goal of all of these. That's kind of
Yeah.
doesn't need to be stated. But if you take, kind of works where even the original anime worked from sources like The Ghost in the Machine, so, the psychology and philosophical stuff. I don't know how well that translates to blockbuster movies.
Yeah.
No.
Just made in succession.
I think this was a good foot in the door of the direction of, hey, you guys, maybe check out the cyberpunk world. That is, I think it's one introductory film to that.
Yeah.
Like, I think, Reese, you were kind of getting at that point where, Scarlett Johansson being the lead and kind of Americanizing this was sort of bringing the audience of the Western world into the concept of more abstract ones. Mm-hmm. So I can see that with this, and I think it did sort of push that direction again.
Yeah. So we haven't been consistent with this, but we're going to close this off with honorable or dishonorable death, where we determine if, since this is the end of this franchise, does it end on a note where it can stand alone, or does it demand sequels? And we will say an honorable death if it stands alone, and a dishonorable death if it does not stand alone. So
That's complicated, though.
it is complicated.
Well,
When you phrase it like
restart
that.
off.
I think it's an honorable death. This movie totally
I would
stands
say
alone.
it wrapped
doesn't-
itself up. It's not just
Yeah,
left
it did.
hanging. So honorable.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
plot strands left hanging. I would say honorable death.
My
Honorable,
thought process
in my
was that it's
opinion.
honorable based on the fact that it can stand alone, but dishonorable in the fact that it didn't get what it deserved.
Yeah. Well, that's not related. This is taking out all of its success and critic stuff, just based solely on the narrative of
end
the
well?
film. Did it end on a note where
Yeah.
it wouldn't
Okay.
need a
All right.
sequel?
I'll say honorable.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
got an honorable death.
Honorable.
Honorable death for Ghost in the Shell. So at least with that silver lining, we can end with
It was,
the fact that this movie
Yeah.
has a complete story.
and it was
AJ.
honorable on our overall score here. So we had an
Yeah, I was
average,
about to ask you.
average of 7.7, which ties it with King Arthur: Legend of the Sword for
I
40
think that's
points.
appropriate.
Yeah, all right.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
sounds
that is
Those are-
just
those are-
above The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe.
Those are two movies that we're above most critics and audiences on. Actually,
Bad that I'd take Arthur over this.
I do
it's
too.
not
No,
bad.
it's not
I'm
bad.
looking back, and I actually really want to watch Legend of the Sword again.
Yeah.
Me too.
Should. And then next up, we have our cyberpunk sort of theme continuing.
Yes. So next week we'll be talking about Blade Runner.
I'm so excited.
I'm really
Not to
excited
show our
about this
hand
one.
at all.
Honestly, that's why we wanted to talk about Ghost in the Shell first, because if we talked about Ghost in the Shell afterwards, it would seem, I don't know,
It'd be
Anticlimactic.
diminished, I
Yeah.
guess. Because really, this whole what does it mean to be human is Blade Runner. It really established that kind of like the replicants and their the strife between.
Reese, you're getting into it too much. That's
know.
next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Sorry,
gotta
I'm getting
hold
excited. I'm getting excited.
We all.
But hey, you know what? Everyone out there right now, go check us out on Instagram.
Also, you can find our podcast on most popular podcast streaming apps: Stitcher, Podbean, Apple, Spotify. What else am I missing? Google.
Just
Google.
look for it. You can probably
Yeah, you'll
find
probably
it.
find us.
Yeah, you'll find us. Anyway, stay tuned. Blade Runner next week.